it's important to understand strategically how you're going to break it down. HSC, or the ATAR in particular, is actually a math equation that you can break down. It shouldn't be a scenario where at the end you're like, oh, I hope I get a good ATAR. All the students that understand what they're doing, they already know exactly what kind of range of ATAR they're going to get into, right? It's not going to be a mystery,
okay,
right? For example, before you even sit your HSC, you already knew from our ATAR predictions of you and where you're at each subject. You already know, okay, I'm going to get anywhere between 99.3 to 99.6 or something like that, or 99.4 to 99.65 or something like this, isn't it?
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
It shouldn't be a guessing game, right? You won't be surprised when the ATAR comes out. You're like, oh, 99.55. Wow. Do you get what I'm saying, right? Because you already did exactly the right amount of work to be able to get to that, isn't it? Okay, so then how do we break it down, right? This is, I feel like, more applicable than to year 10, year 11, year 12s now. So let's just summarize. Year 7, 8, 9, try to challenge yourself as much as you can so that you don't sacrifice extracurriculars and playtime, but at the same time, not just sitting there bored and drooling all class because like you're not learning anything at school, right? Let's put them in environments, put it in places where they are staying busy, building on their skills, improving their knowledge. Right? And then when they get to year 10, year 11, year 12, now they can, because they have good skills, right? They have full control of how, what ATAR they want to get, and they can get there at a good pace, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So let's say, for example, how I like to do it is, if you are in year 10, and you kind of know what you want to be studying uni, what kind of career path you're intrigued about. Go to the UAC books, right? The, what are they called? The guides.
Yeah.
And check out, if you want to be an engineer, if you want to be a doctor, if you want to be a lawyer, what the university ATAR cutoff is for each of those, the most recent up-to-date one, okay? And then make that ATAR goal your kind of minimum priority. For those kids that don't know what they want to do, I think all of them should aim for 99.95. The reason why is if you get 99.95, you can do anything, isn't it? Right? So if you don't have any clear idea, should you not be aiming for the highest possible so that you have more choices, right? But obviously, if you have a good idea, then make whatever the minimum ATAR requirement to get into the course that you want to get into, like the goal, and hope you can hit that before the HSC, right? But then now students are saying, well, how do I break that down? If I want to get a 99.5, how can I break that down, right, into bite-sized, actionable things that we can do?
Yeah.
Well, then it comes down to subject selection. That's why I say year 10 is very important. Because in year 10, you get an opportunity to choose subjects, and depending on the subject you choose, there's a rank and a raw mark that you have to get in that subject that will translate to the ATAR of 99.5. And every subject is different, isn't it? You know about this.
Yeah.
Right? The harder subjects, which are the ones that are more calculation-based, so the questions are not black and white. They're gray. So although they may test you calculus, but they can test you calculus in so many possible ways. And because human error is such a big factor in that those subjects will end up being scaled higher. That's why the highest scaling subjects are 4 in maths, 3 in maths, physics, chemistry. Because to an extent there's calculations involved, and therefore you can't be 100% prepared. Because you're not, most likely you're not going to see a question in the past that's going to come up and present itself in the exam, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not predictable. That's why they can't penalize kids for getting questions wrong if it's just a calculation error. If the students can demonstrate they have knowledge on the subject matter, but it's just because they punched the number wrong on the calculator or skipped a step and made an incorrect calculation, right? That, they're not going to get penalized for like, oh, you didn't put in the hard work, right? That's why they scale so much higher. But then the subjects that don't scale as high, like the things like the geographies and the ancient histories, those subjects, they don't scale well because there's not much scenario-based. It's history-based. It's recollection. It's regurgitating facts. Does that make sense? The facts are either right because they happen or they're wrong because they didn't happen. Does that make sense? So therefore, there's not much room for error. And that's why those subjects don't scale well. You have to be perfect in those subjects, because if you're not, you haven't demonstrated you have enough knowledge or understanding. The math, you can demonstrate understanding even if you get the answer wrong. That's why they scale so much higher.
Okay.
And the harder it is to get to the answer, because there's too many moving parts and moving pieces, the more the scaling is. That's why also languages are scale high, because you don't actually know what question you're going to get, right? You can't just remember a Japanese extract that you remembered, because they might not test you on that. For example, you memorized, you prepared something about asking directions. And then in your exam, whether it be in the written one or the speaking one, right? They asked you about food or what you like to eat. Then that extract that you prepared, there's no, do you know what I'm saying? There's no use case for it. So that's why languages scale high too. And English advanced as well, because a lot of it is, the idea is you can't really just memorize all the facts. Do you know what I'm saying? There is going to be that, degree of change in the question, right? That won't allow you to be able just to be perfect every single time. Unless you really understand that subject matter proficiently. Do you agree?
Yeah.
So that's how scaling works. So therefore, depending on what subject you pick, you will have to come up with a different raw mark and a different rank goal, right? That will result in you being able to hit your ATAR target. Now, why do I say rank and raw mark? Well, that depends from school to school. If you go to James Roos, getting first is very difficult. Every year, 120 kids get band 6 in maths, in 3-unit, for example, right? But maybe if you go to a local school like, I don't know, Willoughby Girls or Chatswood or Berwick Girls or something, because there's not as much like a group of high intellects, right? That coming first is not as difficult. Do you agree? Getting the highest mark is not as difficult. At the same time, because James Roos is a group of all high achieving, high performing kids, that they have to naturally make the exams harder. If you make the exam at the basic level of whatever the syllabus says, right? Everyone will get 100%. Then how do you distinguish between the good kids and the not so good kids, right? They have to make it harder to a point where the best kid will get full marks. The second best kid might make one small silly mistake. The third best kid might make 2 small silly mistakes. And then they can just maybe, you know what I mean, spread them out very clearly. That doesn't mean that the kid that's coming 100th place in James Roos is bad. They might only get 50%, and they might feel sad about that 50% because some kids are getting 100%. But the fact of the matter is that exam was already a much more challenging exam because of your environment, right? That the school had to do that to make it more clear being able to distinguish everyone. That's why the average at the end in schools like top 5 ranked schools, the average is really high. In Roos, every single year, the ATAR average is about 99 point something, right? Top 5 schools, the ATAR average is at least 98 to 99. Does that make sense, right? That's because like even if you get 50% in your school exam, but that's already past the level of difficulty of the general consensus, what NESA wants, right? And therefore, all those people end up getting good marks in the end anyway. It's just like a school thing to be able to grade who's better and who's slightly worse, I guess. Makes sense, right? Okay, so going back to what we were saying, ranks and marks are very important. Ranks will vary depending on what school you go to. So therefore, what we provide at ProEd obviously is, depending on what your school, we tell you, right, by the end, because we do ATAR estimates once a term, right, what rank, if your rank is good enough to get the ATAR that you're aiming for or not. And some kid from your school, maybe my requirement is, oh, you need to be in the top 30. But another school, same ATAR, I might say, no, you need to be top 5, right? The rank is not going to be the same school to school. So therefore, you need someone that obviously understands that to tell you what rank you need to hit. If you go to tutoring like ProEd, we will be able to do that for you. But a lot of times you have career advisors at school that's supposed to know that answer, right? For example, I know some selected schools, the career advisors are really good because they do a very accurate and very good job in terms of their prediction of ATAR, because they look at their ranks and look at the marks and be like, all right, you're in line for this. But a lot of career advisor schools there, I don't know how they even got the job. I have no idea. Yeah, they don't know what they're doing, right?
Yeah.
And this is supposed to be a skill that they should know, okay? So therefore, by giving the students a correct advice in terms of what rank they need to get and what mark corresponds to that rank in their school situation, right? As soon as they hit them, because what you can do is you can do past papers, right? For example, if you're doing past papers, you know, okay, to get this rank, I need to get this mark. And you do the last 3 years, 4 years past papers, and you're consistently getting this mark, right? You're like, okay, I've studied enough on this subject. I can now move on to the next one, which has its own rank and raw mark goal.
Yeah.
Which is school-based, by the way, right? Does that make sense? Yeah. So therefore, it's a very clear way of understanding how hard you need to work for every subject. Too many students, they go, oh, let me do really well in the subject that I like, and hopefully that makes up for the subjects that I'm bad at. But ATAR doesn't work like that. Usually the ones that you're bad at are the ones that actually scale the worst. And if that's the case, then you're in trouble. Because how this works is, even if you get an extra mark in math, right? But you drop a mark in, let's say, for example, legal studies. That one mark that you drop in legal studies might plummet your ATAR by 0.5, but the extra mark that you get from maths might only increase by 0.1. That means net ATAR, you're down 0.4. Does that make sense, right? So you then have to figure out how many marks in maths you have to get to make up for the 1 mark you drop in legal. If 1 mark drop in legal is 0.5, and it's 5 marks gained in math to get plus 0.5, then you have to get 5 marks more for each 1 mark that you drop in legal. Does that make sense? There's an equation that's based on that, right? And you need someone that understands that to be able to tell you, okay, you're going to have to spend more time in legal instead of maths, because the amount of effort that you spend in maths to get 5 marks, you could have gotten 10 marks in legal. You're just not doing it because you're being complacent, and it's not a subject that you enjoy as much, right? But the fact of the matter is, right, you could put that time to better use, right?
Yeah.
So, and we'll do a more detailed breakdown of this. One of the episodes will actually show people scenarios and case studies, right, to do this. But I just wanted to give everyone a basic idea of how this works today.
Yeah.
Okay? So that they understand what kind of mindset it is. This is also why in selective schools, right? For example, North Sydney Girls and Roos. If you want to do low scaling subjects, you have to accelerate them. For example, I have so many year 10 and year 11 students, right, that are doing IPT and software in year 10. Agriculture in year 11, family community studies and geography and stuff in year 11.
Yeah.
The reason why is because those subjects, they don't scale very high, right? You might as well do them in year 11 or year 10 when, you know what I mean? Like you have a lot of free time.
Yeah.
If you get a good mark, great. If you don't get a good mark, don't worry, because in year 12, you'll do high scaling subjects, which means like most likely they will be able to get you the good ATAR over the low scaling subjects. They still require a lot of effort. Like studying history is not easy. You have to memorize a lot of dates, a lot of information, right? It's not easy, but the scaling is just bad because you have to be perfect, right? So that's why selective schools, they manipulate the scenario by only allowing you to do low scaling subjects in lower years, or sometimes they don't even allow it. They go, we don't do drama. We don't do Aboriginal studies. If you want to study those subjects, go to another school, right? That's why those selective schools can stay at a top rank year after year, because they put metrics in place to prevent their students from doing bad. So then majority of those students that go to those schools, they're going to pick math, English advanced or extension, chemistry, physics, bio. Why do they all pick these subjects? Because you're not required to perfect those subjects for the scaling to get you to a higher mark so that you can get a good ATAR. It's just plain and simple. Does that make sense? Right?
Yeah.
And if you're going to spend 10 hours to need to get 95% in history, and you only need to spend 8 hours to only get 75% in math to get you the same ATAR as 95% in history, why the freak wouldn't they do math then? Does that make sense? Because getting 95 is not easy, right? But unfortunately, 75 in math will get you the same as 95 in history. So what can you do, right? You're going to have to put in the time and perfect it. Or if you want to spend less time because it's too much time, it's unreasonable amount of time, right? Then pick a subject that scales well so you don't have to put as much time in it. right? Especially with math and English, because if you really got ahead in year 7, 8, and 9, as we planned, right? In year 12, you're just gonna have a great time. You know, you're gonna have a well-balanced HSC year. Instead of like overwhelming yourself and, you know what I mean, having a lot of anxiety and time pressure.
Yeah.
That, you know what I mean? You don't need to get 100%, right? You can get 75% and still get 99.5. Does that make sense? But kids don't know that. They don't understand that.
Yeah.
Right? So what I advise everyone to do, if you're in year 10, but if you're in year 11 and year 12 right now, what you need to do, in year 10, you still have the luxury of picking subjects, right? That will give you the highest scaling that you can get. All subjects that you're naturally good at that you're going to get well anyway. I do see students that do PDHPE, for example, which is not a very high scaling subject, but because it's so easy to them, it's so normal, logical to them, right? That they're just going to get 95% without studying. Great, you should pick it, right? But if you have to spend a lot of effort to get 95, why don't you pick a subject that you spend less effort because you need to get a lower mark, in which scales higher and gets you a higher ATAR at the end?
And you can spend the time you save on extracurriculars or on English Advanced, because that's compulsory and you have to get good in that one.
Correct.
Yeah.
Exactly. So in year 10, you still have the luxury of picking. Unless it's like past the mid-year that you've already chosen subjects, right?
Yeah.
Then it's going to be a bit awkward. But year 11, year 12, because the subjects you already picked, they're already set. You need to get advice from whoever's knowledgeable on the subject matter and ask them, hey, I want to get this ATAR, number 1. I do these subjects, number 2. What rank and raw mark specific to me in our school do I need to get, right? So in order for me to be in line with that ATAR. Does that make sense? And then your goal is to try to hit that mark as quickly as possible. Once you're able to get one subject to that mark, quickly move on to the next. If you get that subject to that mark, move on to the next, then the next, then the next. Once all of the subjects can get you that minimum ATAR requirement to the subject that you want, now you can increase. You can be like, oh, well, now that I've already hit the minimum requirement to get 97 to get into this course, there's that other course that's a slightly higher ATAR that I can also challenge myself in, right? Then you can set that goal, the high ATAR is a new goal, and try to now increase, right, your raw marks and your ranks to that level.
Yeah.
And then once you hit that, you can keep rising, isn't it? But too many students, they feel like it's a lottery. It's luck. You know what I mean? I'm lucky. If I'm lucky, I'll get 99.5. If I'm not lucky, I will get 95. It's not supposed to be like that, right? You should be able to calculate exactly how much work you need to put into every subject, right? To get the ATAR that you're required to get.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only issue is, the later you start this, the less time you have, isn't it? Imagine this is term 3 in year 12. The HSC is in 4 weeks' time. And now you're like, oh, to get 91.5, I needed to become 5th in school. And you look at your report, you're like, I'm 10th. It's over. You're not getting ATAR.
Yeah.
So the earlier you realize this, the better, because you have more ground, and therefore you can then set up a plan, do you know what I'm saying, to hit those targets with much more wiggle room, if that makes sense. Yeah? And if it gets to a point where for one subject it's really challenging, really tough, if you're in year 12, you have no choice. But if you're in year 11, that could be a deciding factor to what subject you're going to drop. Everyone's compulsory has to do 12 units, right? But some can do 14, 15 units. Do you agree? Right? Then, if you know how much ATAR you need, what rank you need, and what raw mark you need for those subjects to get to the ATAR, then you can do an equation and say, oh, well, I enjoy this subject, but I'm at a point where I can't get to the ATAR I want. Maybe then it's a good decision or idea to drop that subject then. Even if it's okay and you can tolerate it, right?
Yeah.
But unfortunately, you're just not willing to work hard enough, or it's unrealistic to get the mark that you need to get the ATAR that you're aiming for. Do you know what I'm saying? So that would be a good way of deciding what subjects to drop. A lot of students go, I'm getting 80% of music and I'm getting 70% math. Therefore, because 80% of music is higher than 70% of math, I'm going to drop math. That is terrible. Because after scaling, 80% of music might be 81 or 82. 70% of math might be 90%. Do you get what I'm saying?
Right.
And therefore, the ATAR equivalent for 82 in music might only be like 75, And a 90% scale in math might be 99.7.
Yeah.
But they don't understand that, right? So they need to be able to get someone to give them that information as quickly as possible. And then you know how much work needs to be done. And once you know how much work needs to be done, you can schedule your study plan, right, in a way that you can cover and make to get that work done. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And the earlier, the better, isn't it? The earlier, the better. If you start doing this in year 8 or year 9, you have so much time. Do you get what I'm saying? Right? And also, if one of your teachers know scenarios as to how, you can start getting creative, right? You can say, oh, David, is there a possibility, because I can do so much math now, that I can accelerate math in year 10 and year 11, so I can do the HSC in year 11, right? Get math out of the way, 4 unit math out of the way. So I only have to do 6 units or 3 subjects in year 12. You can get a bit creative because you already started earlier, right? I had a girl that was in my class last year. She started tutoring 1.5 years ago, which was like midway year 10.
Okay.
At school, she was able to do accelerated maths. So she was already doing year 11 content in year 10, okay? Then she came to do 3 unit tutoring. Then 3 unit tutoring was so easy, so fast that she was able to finish it all by kind of like early, mid year 11 to a point where she was like, oh, well, since I already know everything in year 11 and you know what I mean, all I need to do now is practice papers, right? And all the other subjects aren't going to count towards my HSC because I can sit my 3 unit HSC in year 11, right? Can I also accelerate year 12, okay? So end of year 10, she asked the school if there was a way for her to accelerate year 12, extension 2. So she already accelerated extension 1. She was like, oh, I'm covering so much ground. I'm a natural at this subject, right? I think I can handle 3 unit and 4 unit together, right? But the school went, oh, we don't offer that. No one in the history of our school has done 4 unit accelerated in year 10 before. In year 11 before. So they do it in year 11 and they sit the HC in year 12, in year 11. Doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So they sit it 1 year earlier. And then her brother did was, her brother was one of our students as well. He went online, Google, how to accelerate maths if your school doesn't offer it. Apparently there's a distance school that she could join. You know how some schools, right? For example, they're rural and they don't have enough students to do extension 2. But if the student wants to do extension 2, what they do is they do a weekend school. So they hop on a Zoom call, or sometimes it's not even a Zoom call. It's just like they give you the the material and they give you the videos to watch, do you know what I'm saying? And then all you have to do is go to their whatever hall on one of the weekends once a term to sit an exam.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Then he was like, oh, well, you know what? We're going to apply to accelerate forward it as a distance school provision. So what she ended up doing, right? Well, she ended up doing 4 unit with us in year 11. 3 unit, she started in year 10. Almost finished all of it. Like midway year 11, she finished everything. End of year 10, she started 4 unit classes. By the end of year 11, she finished all 4 unit. She sat both extension 1 and extension 2 this year. And she did relatively well. Could she have done better? Yeah. But because the scaling is so high, you know how extension 1, extension 2 works, right?
Yeah.
Once you hit a certain amount, the scaling is already going to take you to the ATAR that you need. So you don't really need to get full marks. Like getting 80% in 4 unit is already enough to, like, you know what I mean, secure you 99.75 or whatever. 99.8. Right? So, and I'm pretty sure she like went way past that. I think she got like high to low 90s. For the HSC this year, and she still felt like she stuffed up. She could have done a bit better. But to be honest, she probably doesn't need it unless she's going for 99.95, which I still think those marks are good enough to get. Right?
Yeah.
But what the advantage is now, Kevin, is this year, year 12 just started this term. She only has 3 subjects. She has English, Phys, Chem. She's like, half the week, I only have 1 class. I go to class and then I can just go to the library or go home. She has so much time.
Yeah.
Right? Why? Because she used that time earlier. In year 7, year 8, year 9, where she was, instead of sitting there and twiddling her thumbs, right? She's like, all right, let me challenge myself. Do you know what I'm saying? And then in year 10, she's like, all right, David, how much do I need to get in extension 1 to be able to get the ATAR that I want? Right? And then in year 11, how much do I need to get extension 2 to get the ATAR 1? And worst case scenario, if she didn't hit it, What can she do, Kevin?
Do it next year.
Do it again in year 12. Exactly. Right? I don't think she'll need to do it though. Yeah, because in year 11, she didn't really have to focus on the other stuff because that stuff isn't going to translate to the HSC anyway. You know how English works. English in year 11 is not really like, the texts are not really relevant.
No, they're not.
Not at all, right?
Yeah.
So you can just put like 80% of the time doing math and just like not be dumb and make sure she understands the bare minimum in year 11 subjects. And that's good enough, right?
Yeah.
Makes sense, right? Yeah, so kids are doing this, right?
Crazy.
It is crazy, right? Imagine sitting the HSC, 40% of it is already done in year 11, right? Already secured 40% of the 99.95, which I think is what that student is going to get. And she only has to do 60% of the rest of the 99.95 in year 12, which means she has so much time to perfect English, chemistry, and physics, and especially English, like you said. If you start late, you don't really have a lot of time. Because most students, what are they doing, Kevin? They're spending a lot of time understanding the math in year 11, year 12, right? So that they can't really put a lot of time in English because they hate it, they procrastinate, right? It's the last on their to-do list, but it's the one that they need to get the highest marks on. And that's why half of them are not getting 9.95 in the first place. But imagine you already finished maths. Not even all this time. You can write as many English essays as you want. You go to school one class a day. It's crazy.
Yeah.
1-2 classes a day.
No, that's pretty good.
That's amazing, right?
Yeah.
But if you start too late, you don't have those advantages, right? You don't have those luxuries. And half the time is wasted anyway. So that's what I don't get, right? Yeah, okay, if you're trying to be like a state swimmer or a state runner or something like that, and you have to spend a lot of time to do sports in the lower years, I get that, you know what I mean? Okay, then just relax, you know what I mean? You don't have to be so driven in academics, right? But if you're just twiddling your thumbs, why not? Why not get better, right? Because you already know what the end goal is. For in math, you already know in year 8 what you have to cover, year 9 what you have to cover, year 10, year 11, year 12. The syllabus is there, right? If you already finished everything in year 7, why not go on to year 8? It's already there. You already know what you need to study, right? And then year 9, year 10, year 11, right? Yeah, so it's important. And obviously we're going to go into more detail later on all of these things. Like, you know, how to pick subjects in year 10, you know what I mean? To kind of gauge how hard you need to work. You know what I mean? What websites and stuff to visit to check what ATAR you want to get. Also understanding which schools you want to go to for those subject matters, right? For example, you want to go to engineering in UNSW and not engineering in some other uni in which they specialize in finance or commerce, for example, right? There's specific unis that are better in certain areas than others. So therefore, even if you want to do engineering, you should rather go to UNSW as an example, right? And also parents, let's be honest, like the parents they don't know half the stuff, right? So they will also be able to figure out this information, find out this information so that they can also support their kids, you know what I mean, the right way.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the parents, they don't know how to support them, you know what I mean? Like they don't know that if they don't start early, that they're not going to be able to get to this mark in this subject, therefore they can get this ATAR very easily, right? They also don't know school teachers aren't good enough in certain areas, right? So you can't rely on the school teachers. If you find out that the school teachers can't get the students to where they need to be, then you have to find external help. You know what I'm saying? Some schools are so good that they don't even need to do tutoring. I checked last year's state rank list of some of the subjects, and there was one school in particular in one of the science subjects, right? 6 or 7 of the state ranks came from the same school.
Okay.
Those students in that school don't have to do tutoring because their school teachers are good enough. I argue that those school teachers are the ones that are writing exams as well. So they prepare them really well. Yeah. But obviously, that same school, they might have another subject that they're really, really bad at, and they have to go find external help, external tutoring, you know what I mean? To get what they need to be getting.
Yep.